Bismillahir-Rahman-Nir-Rahim. The status of Hadeeth in Islam.
Through the Quranic and historical perspective.
How were Ahadith compiled? How did these Ahadith reach us? What is their status in Deen? What is the mutual relationship of the Quran and Ahadith?
Ghulam Ahmad Parwez.
Muhammad Aslam Jairajpuri. 6. Attaining Paradise. According to Ahadith, Islam is the name given to living your life according to the divine system.
When the Jamaat-e-Momineen rise up for the establishment of this system, all the vested interests of the world rise up from all four directions, forming a horde gathered together in opposition to it.
This Jamaat has to face all these opposing forces, and it is obvious that to establish this system and to maintain its strength, there will need to be persistent and sustained efforts and action. This is why the life of a Momin is one of continuous jihad. These are the valiant actions and soldierly endeavors following which a Momin achieves Jannat,
Paradise. Pointing to those people who think that they will get Jannat just by sitting around, the Quran states,
or do you think that you shall enter Jannat without such
trials
as came to those who passed away before you? They encountered suffering and adversity, and were so shaken in spirit that even the messenger and those of Iman who were with him cried, when will come the help of Allah?
Verily, the help of Allah is always near. 214.
What? Do you think that you will simply enter Jannat? This cannot happen.
You too will have to pass through those stages through which previous peoples have passed who endeavored for this type of revolution.
Due to the hosts of opposing forces, their state was such that hardships and difficulties encircled them from all directions.
And they became apprehensive and wondered when will be the fruition of our efforts according to the divine laws.
Then ultimately their efforts bore fruit. In another verse the Quran says,
did you think that you would enter heaven without Allah testing those of you who fought hard
in His cause, and remained steadfast?
142.
Do you think that you will enter Jannat, though you have not yet proven through your character and deeds who from amongst you is foremost in righteous deeds, and who is foremost in strictly persevering?
This is the Jannat that the Quran has promised i.e., this is the result of pure and righteous efforts and deeds.
17. That Jannat which was hidden in the blood and sweat of a Momin. This was the teaching of the Quran, but in contrast to this you can see how cheap and easy Jannat has been made according to Ahadith. Just reflect. 6.1 Shaking hands. Abu Dawud narrates that Rasulullah said when two Muslims shake hands before they take leave from one another, Allah bestows forgiveness on both of them. 6.2 Jannat through ablution. A hadith is noted in Muslim which states that by performing ablutions, all sins spill away with the water, so much so that with the last drop of water every last sin from every part of the body is washed away. There is also another hadith of Muslim according to which any person who performs full ablutions and then after this reads his namaz, prayer, and also says namaz precisely and well, then after this namaz he becomes as if he was born from his mother's womb that same day. The third hadith of Muslim says that whichever individual performs his ablutions well and then after ablutions says the following kalmat, Ishadi an Allah alala, all 8 doors of Jannat are opened for such an individual. Ibn-e-Kazima narrates that the messenger asked Hazrat Bilal, what deeds do you perform? I heard the sound of your footsteps in Jannat and you were walking ahead of me. Bilal replied that I perform 2 tasks regularly. The first is that I always remain in a state of ablution. When my ablution is broken, I immediately do further ablution, and when I perform ablution I pray 2 rakat of nafil. You have noted from this how easily Jannat can be attained i.e., just through performing ablutions all sins are washed away along with the water. And if 2 rakat nafil are also offered with it, then you can arrive in Jannat ahead of Rasulullah. 6.3 Even easier than this.
There is a hadith in Muslim that if an individual repeats the words of a muezzin after him and then says, Lahul wala quwwata illa
billah, he will go to Jannat.
6.4 Keep on sinning.
There is a narrative in Tabrani that the messenger said that you are always burning yourself, i.e., you do deeds which lead to fire, but when you say your morning namaz, this cools you down, i.e., draws you away from hell. Then you do similar acts again till Zuhr, afternoon prayer. But the Zuhr namaz cools you down, and similarly the namaz of Maghrib and Isha, sunset and night, erase the sins committed between these prayers.
When you are sleeping, no sin is written down against you till you wake from sleep. And if during the night you do acts which deserve hell, then the morning namaz will cool these down. 6.5 Congregational prayers.
There is a hadith in Tirmizi which says that a person is absolved of hellfire and hypocrisy. Nifaq, if he offers prayers for 40 days with takbir-e-ula. 6.6 Further concession.
Both Bukhari and Muslim have quoted that when an imam completes the recitation of Surah Fatiha and says, Walajulan, the angels say, Ameen. From among the followers, the individual whose Ameen is said simultaneously with that of the angels will have all his sins forgiven.
Another hadith of Bukhari and Muslim states that when the imam says, Sami Allahu liman hamida, and raises his head after ruku, you should recite Rabbana lak al-hamd. Whichever man recites this kalma shall have all of his sins forgiven. 6.7 Abode in Paradise. So far we have only mentioned the forgiveness of sins. A hadith in Muslim states that a house is made in Jannat for the person who prays 12 rakat day and night over and above the farz prayers. Compulsory prayers. A narration from Tirmizi states that a house is built in Jannat for the one who prays 20 rakat nafil after the Maghrib namaz. Sunset.
A narration from Abu Dawud states that the fire of hell is made haram for an individual who prays 4 rakat before Zuhr prayers.
Afternoon prayer. 6.8 All sins forgiven.
A hadith of Muslim states that a person who
comes to Jummah, Friday, prayers having performed his ablutions thoroughly, and sits silently listening to the sermon, not only has his sins forgiven from Friday to Friday, but the sins of 3 additional days are also forgiven. 6.9 Getting in paradise by offering wazayf.
Wazayf is a distinctive feature of Ajmi Islam,
non-Arab version of Islam. Whatever problem arises relating to matters of deen or dunya, religious or worldly, there is no need to make any effort or move your hands or feet, just read a wazifa and the aim will be achieved.
Jannat can also be achieved through these wazayf. For example, there is a hadith from Nisa'i which states that whoever has recited, O
Allah, keep me away from the fire of hell 7 times with the morning and evening prayers, if he then dies at any time during the day or night, he will go to Jannat. In another hadith it is noted that if the person who recites the Ayat al-Kursi after every namaz dies before the next namaz, he will go to Jannat. There is a narrative in Tirmizi that whoever at the time of lying down in bed recited, Astaghfir Allah al-Lazi la ilaha illahu wal hayal qayyum wa atubu alayha. O Allah, forgive me.
There is no God except you who is alive and established, and I return to you,
had all of his sins pardoned.
Such sins may be equal to the foam of rivers, or equal to the leaves on the trees, or equivalent to the particles of sand, or their number is equivalent to the days of the world, i.e., as many days as are from the beginning of the universe till the day of judgment. Even if the sins are that many, all will be forgiven.
It is quoted in Muslim that whoever recites Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar 33 times each, after each namaz, has all his sins pardoned regardless of how great their number may be. In Tirmizi it is noted that whoever recites Qul Hu Wallah daily 100 times has his sins of the past 50 years are erased. In Masnad Imam Ahmad it is noted that Hazrat Hani requested Rasulullah, "Tell me a light wazifa because I have become very old." Rasulullah replied, "Recite Subhanallah 100 times. Its sawab is equal to giving freedom to 100 slaves and those too who are the progeny of Hazrat Ishmael. Recite Alhamdulillah 100 times, its sawab is like donating 100 horses completely laden with saddles to Mujahideen, Muslim warriors. Recite Allahu Akbar 100 times, its reward is equal to donating 100 camels with their coverings in the way of Allah.
And recite, La ilaha illallah, 100 times, and this kalma fills the earth and the heavens with sawab.
The day you recite this wazifa, that day no one else's deeds ascending to the heavens will be equivalent to yours.
However, if someone else also recites this wazifa, his deeds will undoubtedly be equal to yours. 6.10 Shahadat.
Martyrdom. There is a narration from Hakim which states that if during an illness a person recites La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu minaz zaliman 40 times, and then dies during this same illness, he will get sawab, which is the equivalent of one shaheed, martyr. And if he recovers from this illness, then he becomes well after being cleansed of all sins. In the struggle and endeavor to establish the Quranic system, every sacrifice has its own weightage. But among these the most invaluable sacrifice is the sacrifice of a human life.
The Quran has called such devoted individuals, Maktul fi sabil lillah,
those laying down their lives in the cause of Allah, commonly known as shaheed, martyr. Obviously shahadat, martyrdom, carries a very elevated status among human deeds, and for the opponents there is no greater adversary than those who fight in the cause of Allah.
These mujahideen and maktulin fi sabil lillah were those who destroyed and annihilated the forces of battle.
Falsehood. It was therefore necessary that a Muslim was made averse to jihad and qital fi sabil illah, fighting in the way of Allah, i.e., establishing deen, the Quranic system. Now see what sorts of narrations have been entered in our books of Hadeeth in order to achieve this end. A Hadeeth in Muslim says that Rasulullah asked, "Who do you consider to be shaheed?" Those present replied, "The one who is killed in the cause of Allah." Rasulullah said that in this way the number of shaheed in my ummah will remain very few. The people asked, "Then who is a shaheed?" He replied, "The one who is killed in the cause of Allah is a shaheed. And the one who died of plague is shaheed. The one who died of dysentery is shaheed, the one who died due to being drowned in water is shaheed, and the one who died due to being buried under a house which has collapsed is shaheed." Similarly in Abu Dawud and Nisa'i it is quoted that the one who dies of pneumonia is shaheed. The one who dies due to being burned in a fire is also a shaheed, and the woman who dies due to childbirth is shaheed. After this let us see what privileges these shaheed get from Allah.
This is obvious that a shaheed goes straight to Jannat. But according to the narratives he does not go to Jannat alone, but takes many of his near and dear ones along to Jannat with him.
In this regard there is a hadith in Abu Dawud which says that Rasulullah stated that a shaheed has the right to do intercession for 70 people from among his near and dear ones. 6.11 Death of a traveler. In Nisa'i it is noted that the death of a person occurred in Medina. Rasulullah led his funeral prayers but after the namaz said that it would have been better had he died in a foreign land. Someone asked, "What is the benefit of dying during a journey?" Rasulullah replied that the individual who dies during a journey will be given an amount of land in Jannat which will be equivalent to the distance from his place of death to the land of his birth. 6.12
Father of daughters. Regarding offspring, Man is helpless as to whether daughters are born to him or sons.
But there is a concession even in this helplessness.
Hakim narrates that whichever individual has 2 daughters and does good towards them, then as long as they remain with him, these daughters will take him to Jannat.
This is the situation concerning that individual whose children are alive. Now we come to the situation of the one whose children have died. Regarding this, a narration in both Muslim and Bukhari states that Rasulullah declared that Allah will give entry to Jannat to the Muslim whose 3 minor children die.
Another hadith of both Bukhari and Muslim says that if 3 children belonging to someone die, then it is not possible that fire should caress him. He will be asked to pass over Sirat just to fulfill the oath.
In Nisa'i there is a hadith that after hearing the glad tidings of entry to Jannat as a result of the death of 3 children, a woman asked, "O Rasulullah, what if only 2 children belonging to someone die?" He replied that this same good news applies in the case of the death of 2 children. This woman said afterwards, "Alas! It would have been well if I had asked about 1 child as well." But this deficit was filled by a narration from Sunan Imam Ahmad in which Hazrat Maz narrates that Rasulullah gave the good news of Jannat in the case of the death of 1 child also, even including loss through a miscarriage. 6.13 Woman committing fornication.
According to the Quran, fornication is a great crime.
But see how easily even this crime is pardoned.
In Bukhari it is stated that a fornicating woman saw a female dog is distressed with thirst.
She brought out her shoe and tying it to her shawl she took out water from a well and gave it to the dog.
Based on this, Allah sent her to Jannat.
6.14 Freedom of Hellmates. Imam Bayhaqi narrates that on each night during the month of Ramadan, 600,000 inmates of hell are freed, and on the last night of Ramadan, the number of inmates of hell equal to the sum total who are freed on all the previous nights, are released. Similarly, it is stated in Muslim that keeping a fast on Arafah results in all sins committed the year before and those yet to be committed in the coming year are pardoned. And fasting on the 10th of Muharram atones for all the sins of the previous 1 year. Ibn Majah adds that with such a fast sins of the coming year are also atoned for. 6.15 Killer of snake and lizard. There is a hadith in Muslim that whoever kills a lizard with the first stroke, his sawab is greater than the one who kills it with 2 strokes. And the one who kills it with 2 strokes, his sawab is greater than the one who kills it with 3 strokes. Abu Dawud narrates that if a snake makes an appearance in your house, say to it, "You swear on this promise which you made with Hazrat Nuh and Hazrat Sulaiman, that you will not harm us." If it still makes an appearance, then kill it.
According to the Masnad of Imam Ahmad, the man will get sawab equal to 7 beneficent deeds.
6.16 Recitation of the Quran. The Quran is the book of laws for the divine system according to which human society should be established. Obviously the laws are meant to be followed, and had the deeds of Muslims been in accordance with the Quran, the forces of battle, falsehood, would never have been able to raise their heads.
Therefore the first trick of the opponents of Islam was to make the Muslims turn away from Islam somehow, and for this they told the Muslims that the Quran was just for reading, and not to be followed.
Sawab is gained from reading it. Where there is mention of deeds in the Quran, it means those acts through which demons and evil spirits are chased away. It is also clear that the Quran can only be followed if it is read with understanding, and intellect and reason are used to reflect on it. But narrations did away with this need as well, and declared that by merely reciting the words of the Quran without understanding and without meaning can provide sawab. This way they entangled the Muslims in repeating recitation of the words of the Quran, i.e., just for reading. All books of Hadeeth are filled with the blessings to be attained by simply repeating the words of the Quran.
As a specimen, Listen to a few examples.
There is a narrative of Sahihain that a Sahabi was reciting the Quran during the night.
His horse was tied nearby. It started rearing up.
The man stopped his recitation and looked towards the heavens where he saw many lights like lamps which were moving from below to higher up.
In the morning he related the incident to Rasulullah, who said that these were angels who were coming to listen to your recitation.
Had you kept on reciting, you would have seen strange and mesmerizing things. A narrative in Muslim states that the last two verses of Surah Fatiha and Surah Baqarah are two nurs, lights, which were not bestowed on any other messenger before me.
Whosoever reads even one word of these will be given that nur.
In Mustadrik Hakim it is stated Satan runs out of that house in which Ayat al-Kursi is recited. In Tirmizi it is stated that if the last two verses of Surah Baqarah are recited in a jungle for 3 consecutive days and nights, Satan will have no power in that place. In Sunan ibn Majah it is stated that Surah Yasin is the heart of Quran. Anyone who recites it for the glory of Allah and for the home in the hereafter is forgiven, and therefore you should recite it over your dead. In Tirmizi it is stated that the person who recites Surah Yasin once gets the equivalent sawab of reciting the whole of the Quran 10 times. In Mayota Imam Malik it is stated that when Rasulullah heard a man reciting Qul ho wallahu ahad, he said that it has been made wajib for him. When someone asked what has been made wajib for him, the messenger replied Jannat has been made wajib. In Hakim it is noted that Allah listens with great
pleasure to a person who recites the Quran in a melodious voice, like a person who enjoys listening to songs listens with pleasure to the voice of the singer.
6.17 Paradise is for the powerless and weak. In order to counter the forces of evil, those who
stand up for truth must have greater forces than the forces of the opponents.
This is why Islam is a deen of power and supremacy. That is why the Quran states, "It is the fellowship of Allah that must certainly triumph." 5:56. The Quran repeatedly commands the Muslims that you should have so much power and strength that the hearts of your opponents remain overawed by you.
It was the force of the Jamaat of Momineen which reduced the grandeur and splendor of Qaisar o Kisra to dust.
This is why the opponents were aware that until this belief that Allah cherishes power and strength was not removed from the hearts of Muslims, it would be impossible to overpower and subdue them.
Therefore they started inventing such ahadith that only those people are closer to Allah who are weak and powerless, who are continually draped in poverty and deprivation, who are symbols of feebleness and helplessness and who are suffering humiliation and disgrace in the world.
Consequently, in Bukhari and Muslim it is noted that Rasulullah stated, "I saw that in Jannat the majority were those who were beggars in this world." Tibrani narrates that Rasulullah said that my horse
water fountain
is very wide and deep, its shining glasses are as many as the stars in the heavens. Its water is whiter than snow and sweeter than honey. The majority of those who will come to this horse will be the impoverished Muhajirin. Someone inquired, "Tell us of their condition and who they are." He replied, "Those same people whose hair is uncombed, whose clothes are unwashed and dirty. Those to whom people of higher status would not consider giving the daughters. No one would like to associate with them. If they owe anything to anyone, he will be able to get it by climbing their chests. And if they have a right over someone, these poor souls cannot do anything about it due to their weakness. Have you seen what characteristics have been detailed of those who are closer to Allah, downtrodden,
distressed,
worn out, with dirty and ragged clothing? No one allowing them to come close, in such a state of weakness and impoverishment that the powerful trample on their rights and these poor beings can do nothing but sigh helplessly. Very strange indeed. In Tirmizi it is stated that the poor will enter Jannat 500 years before the rich. In Ibn Majah it is stated that the poor and helpless were so dear to Rasulullah that he used to pray, "O Allah, keep me alive in a state of helplessness,
Miskin,
and give me death in this
state of helplessness, and make my end also with
the helpless." Helplessness is such a thing which the Quran declares to be azab,
punishment,
from Allah. The Quran states in the case of the Jews,
they were covered with humiliation and helplessness, they drew on themselves the wrath
of Allah. 2:61. In both Bukhari and Muslim it is stated that Rasulullah said that I want to acquaint you with Ahla Jannat, inhabitants of Jannat. These weak and feeble and humbled Muslims are those belonging to Jannat, who if they swore by Allah, he would definitely make it the truth.
In Tibrani it is stated that Rasulullah said that in my ummah there are also those people who if they ask for even the sum of a dirham from you,
you will refuse them, but if they ask for Jannat from Allah, he will bestow Jannat on them. These are those same people whose clothes are dirty, their hair is messy and they are downtrodden due to poverty. But if they swear by Allah, he will oblige.
This is how poverty, deprivation, misery, helplessness, weakness, slavery and scarcity became attractive attributes for the Muslims.
And this thing was indoctrinated in their minds that problems and worries are atonement for sins.
6.18 Problems are atonement for sins. Therefore in Masnad Imam Ahmad it is noted that Rasulullah said that when the sins of a person become too many and there is no way to atone for the sins, then Allah grips him in pain and problems.
And these very troubles then atone for his sins.
6.19 Even illness.
In Tibrani it is stated that when a mu'min falls ill, Allah cleanses him of his sins in such a way as a furnace cleanses iron of rust and impurities. In Bukhari it is stated that when a person falls ill or is traveling, then Allah commands the angels that since there is a deficiency in his deeds due to the illness or journey, to keep writing as if they were complete.
In Masnad Imam it is stated that the mistakes of a sick man fall away just as leaves are shed during autumn.
If a mu'min regains health, he becomes healthy having been cleansed of all sins, and if he dies as one who is blessed and pardoned. 6.20 Jannat due to fever.
It is stated in a narrative that Rasulullah said that sins can be forgiven as a result of fever and headache, even if these sins were as large as Mount Uhud. Abu Ya'ala.
Even a fever lasting one day washes out all the sins of a mu'min. 6.21 The blind. In Bukhari it is stated that when Allah takes away the sight of an individual, he confers Jannat in return.
6.22 Living in solitude. The Quran has stated about the mu'minin that
we made them waster so that they monitor the acts and deeds of all mankind. Thus have we made of you an ummah justly balanced that you be witnesses over the nations. 143. And if anyone begins to leave the path of justice,
even slightly, they immediately bring him back to the straight path. But the Hadeeth state that those closer to Allah are those who stay in their homes and keep crying over their misdeeds. In this regard, it is quoted in Tirmizi that someone asked Rasulullah what can lead to salvation. He replied, keep your mouth shut, weep over your misdeeds and remain sitting in your home. In Abu Dawud it is stated that Rasulullah said that a time will come when the value of promise and commitment will decrease, and trustworthiness will become worthless. Putting his hands together and interlocking his fingers, he informed the audience that intrigues will become interwoven like the cloth of a sack. Ibn Abbas asked, what ought I to do in such a situation? He was told, sit in your home and weep over your existence, adopt righteousness, give up wrong, save your life from hell and dissociate yourself from public life. Not only this but that one should leave the cities and go to the jungle. Because it is stated in a hadith that sawab of a namaz in congregation is equivalent to 25 namaz. but the sawab of saying namaz in the jungle away from people is the equivalent of 50 namaz.
This is that same life of monasticism which the Quran came to eradicate, i.e., either go to the jungle, or if you stay in a city then remain inside your homes and keep weeping from fear of Allah. In this regard there is a narrative in Bayhaqi that one day Rasulullah was giving a sermon and a man started crying while performing ablution. Rasulullah said that those sitting near him have also been pardoned, bakshed, even if their sins were as great as a mountain. In this same book there is a narrative about an Ansari that he was so overwhelmed by the fear of Allah that he used to always weep.
When Rasulullah heard about him, he went to his house and embraced him. The Ansari became so overwhelmed by this act that he dropped dead.
6.23 Paradise for funeral goers. In Muslim there is a narration that Rasulullah stated that if 40 people participate in the namaz-e-janazah, funeral prayer, Allah forgives the dead one. In Abu Dawud it is narrated that if there are 3 rows of Muslims reading namaz at a funeral, Jannat becomes wajib on the dead one. And in Bukhari it is narrated that if 4 or 3 or even 2 persons describe the dead one as being good, Allah forgives him. 6.24 And even if this was not the case, then
let us proceed. A narration from Bayhaqi says that a person will be told to enter the fire. Reaching the edge of hell, he will begin to look this way and that and will say, I swear by Allah that I have hope of good and anticipate favor from him. There will be a response from Allah to bring him back as I am close to the expectation of my servant.
In short, these are the techniques to achieve that Jannat regarding which the Quran had declared that such life testing stages come in their paths that even the messenger and his companions used to become overwhelmed and look towards the heavens for help. This Jannat was achieved through that great revolution, as a result of which control was snatched from the hands of a group of exploiting forces and vested interests of the world, and all control was put in the hands of the divine laws.
And no man remained the slave of another man nor dependent.
In this revolution neither the magnificence of Qaisar nor the grandeur of Kisra, nor the cunning deceptiveness of the system of monasticism could remain, nor permission to perpetuate the leadership and influence of priesthood and so-called religious scholars. This system was a proclamation of war against all these self-interested parties, therefore they were defeated through the hands of Islam.
This is why these kinds of narratives were invented and spread about.
6.25 If you do not sin then. So much so that in one narration it is stated that Rasulullah said, I swear by he in whose hands is my life, that if you become such that you simply cannot commit any sin, then Allah will remove you from the earth and will create another group in your place, whose conduct will be such that they will be indulging in sins, and then this group will pray for forgiveness and pardon from Allah.
We think that after this account there is nothing more which needs to be said in this regard.
As we have written at the beginning, the ultimate aim of Deen is the achievement of Jannat. For this a Muslim has to spend his entire life as a mujahid. These are the life-giving deeds of the Jamaat-e-Momineen which stir a great revolution resulting in benefits in their own society, and then later on for the whole of mankind worldwide. Now consider that if Muslims are given such lessons that if they did not commit sins then Allah would replace them with another nation, then what can be the condition of the society of such a nation?
And if they do become ready to perform righteous deeds but are told of such easy techniques to achieve Jannat, how will any fighting spirit remain in them? Today in this static religion all instruction is based on these types of invented narratives which have been presented to you in the previous pages.
And these are those very narrations on whose denial fatwas of kufr are announced by the mullah. This is that reality which Allama Iqbal has noted with tears of blood in the following words. Though my way of expression is not very startling,
Perhaps my words may penetrate into your heart.
In the universe there is perpetual proclamation of Allah. In the lap of the dusty earth the continuous counting of rosary beads and prayers.
That deen which gives self-awareness and awareness of Allah, and this mullah-dependent religion, suffering from inertia and devoid of life.